Olá, pessoal. Meu nome é Bruno. Eu sou pesquisador do Centro Internacional de Pesquisa Autor. E hoje nós vamos conversar com Davide Casaleggio, economista, especialista em negócios digitais. Davide é CEO da Casaleggio Associati e fundador e presidente da Associazione Rousseau, responsável pela plataforma de democracia direta, Rousseau. Autor de livros como E-Business Model e You Are Net, tem desenvolvido pesquisas em áreas como inteligência artificial, blockchain e outras questões relacionadas à quarta revolução industrial. Well, Davide, I think as a president of the Associazione Rousseau responsible for the development and administration of the Rousseau platform, could you tell us a little bit what's the history of the platform, how it came to be and its current status?
Yeah, sure. Well, the Rousseau platform is a participation online platform. It's most known for being the platform that the Five Star Movement in Italy used in the last 10 years. I guess from when it started voting online and getting people participating online. So from 2012, we created a system that allowed people to vote online. And that's how the MPs actually have been chosen in Italy for the Five Star Movement, both in 2013 and in 2018. Today, there's the biggest number of MPs in Parliament are of the Five Star Movement, and they've been chosen on the Rousseau platform, where people can candidate themselves and vote for others in a participation system that allows anyone to participate directly. Obviously, the vote is one of the many features that are on the Rousseau platform, because in these years we've been developing a lot of new features to get people involved and participating directly in creating new laws from bottom up that finished up in Parliament. 26 laws actually finished up in Parliament, created from the users, from the members of the Five Star Movement that was participating on the Rousseau platform. Members elected members in town councils or in various levels of the institutions could share materials that they presented in the town councils, for example, with others and get them shared with everyone and get them commented and etc. with everyone. And we have also an e-learning platform, event platform, and many other features that allowed a complete organization of a complex organization like a political movement that was completely organized online through the Rousseau platform.
Well, that's a point that I would like to get. The history of the Rousseau was for a long time intertwined with the story of the M5S in such a way that it seemed that the platform was more than just a simple mechanism or a tool with functionalities that would allow for the organization of the movement. It was like it was responsible for the exact thing that made the movement what it is or was, and vice versa, like a sort of a nervous system of the movement or something alike. So with this split, where do you go from there? What did the platform win and lose with this separation, and what kind of redesigns will be necessary?
Well, what we've been working on in the last few months is an opening up of this platform to be able to use this platform also in other contexts where you have a complex organization that can live online, can get people participating. We have many organizations that are based on a delegation. You delegate someone in your town that then delegates someone in a province and region, and in the end you have 5 people delegated by people that have been delegated themselves that decide for everyone else in the organization. That is normally what happens in a complex organization, and this is what can be changed. You can start participating and not delegating in these type of organization. And we have many type of organizations in this situation. For example, sport organization, sports federation, unions, parties, any or groups of shareholders of listed companies, or you have many types of organizations that have a lot of people that need to get organized themselves. And now it is possible. It is possible using the net, using participation platforms like Rousseau. So I think this is the new era of the platform society in a new dimension, not the social media dimension that we know today, but in a new dimension that is the organization that gets taken on the platform and the people can participate directly.
Is this this would be the Camelot project, or is Camelot another thing?
Yes, the Camelot project. We've chosen this name Camelot as the round table to open up the Rousseau project to all the organizations that want to use this new type of getting together and getting people participating, extracting value from people, because you can see this thing from both sides, both on the side of the people that want to participate, want to create value for the organization, and on the other side, people who are organizing these complex organizations that normally don't even know the people that are members of the organization. They just see a long list of names, and they know that those long lists of names once a year will have to vote for the balance sheet or for the president or for whatever, and that's about it. The value that you extract from those people. So you can also see it on the other side, and getting people involved means getting people to propose, to debate, to create value from bottom up. So it's a very stimulating new way of seeing these type of organization in a holacratic view for the people who are studying organization types.
Nice. I would like to talking about this style of from bottom-up organization. I would like to broaden up a little bit the conversation. In the past 2 decades, we have seen a continuous emergence of political movements, self-proclaimed outsiders or anti-establishment, sometimes pointed as avant-garde and others as having populist agendas. But without a doubt, all of these movements are some sort of expression of a democratic crisis, or at least a crisis of the representative democracy. Especially in the past 10 years, there has been an impressive growth of different models of platforms for political participation, with the promise of solutions and alternatives for that problem. With that being said, what is your evaluation of this democratic crisis? How do you perceive it came to be? And with the rise of far-right figures and governments in the source like Trump and Bolsonaro here in Brazil, Salvini in Italy, Viktor Orban in Hungary, where do you see it going?
Well, I see a crisis of the representative democracy, because today there are tools to get people participating, not only once every 4 or 5 years whenever the elections are, but also in the meanwhile. So if representatives in parliament or in any elected institutions aren't aware of this or don't want to open up to this, obviously there'll be movements of people that will want to use it anyway, independently of the permission given from the representatives in parliament. So I think this is the thing that we need to understand, how to use these new tools, not just for marketing activities of promoting the party just a couple of months before elections, but how to use these tools to get people involved and to get them deciding on things directly with binding decisions. I think that is the most essential difference between what can be done on a marketing level. So you can get 100 people discussing on something and then saying this is the new constitution that we want to do, but let's have the elected people, the serious people, decide on what we are really going to do. And that is a marketing activity that gets done. And then you have, okay, let's give the people 5% of the budget of our city, and you can discuss it. You can decide on where you want to give that money and how you want to spend it. And whatever you decide, that will be done. That is the binding system. So today we have a lot of platforms, a lot of ways of involving people, but until people in institutions give up some part of their power, giving up the binding decision to people that want to participate, you will just have a marketing activity that will just get people fed up and wanting something else. So I think that is the main thing that we've brought forward in these years, and that is the reason for which, for example, we managed to have the world record of a single vote in a day in Italy using the Rousseau platform, because that was a binding decision, and it was actually the green light for the government. So if that decision was a no, it would have been a red light for the government, and that was it. It was a binding decision.
Well, that's the thing. It's the main challenge. You said keeping this binding decision. In your perspective, how do we surpass? Like, if I'm not mistaken, Rousseau is one of the only platforms that managed to gain national relevance. And what are the challenges that you faced while going through this process of institutionalization of the movement and dealing with the political structure as it is instituted? How do you deal with these power forces, power disputes?
In these years, one thing I've understood is that you have to deal with the conflicts of the interests within an organization. So it's very important to have the people who deal with the participation, who verify the participation, not tied to the results of that participation. Because obviously, if you have people that want to be elected in parliament, defining the questions, defining the methodology, checking on the results and checking on all the system, it will be very difficult to create a trust around the system itself, because obviously the people will want to be re-elected or will want to have rules that allow them to be in power for more time, and et cetera, et cetera. So one thing that I'm very conscious of is that you need to have a separation of powers in the participation power, in the participation dealing organization, and in the results, who is affected by those results. Because otherwise you obviously will have people that are in power that will be trying to not have people participating too much, or not having them deciding on things that they don't want to be decided on, etc., etc.
And how do you see that digital technologies in general, and specifically digital platforms for political participation, are managing to grow in this scenario? How do you perceive is the current status of these technologies around the world?
Well, I think it's not a technology problem, and it's not even a money problem. I think it's just a question of change management. I work a lot with companies that are changing the way they use technology, the way they organize, the way they are approaching this evolution of this third or fourth revolution that we're having. And in politics, I see the same problem. The politics is simply a bit further back in this evolution. But if we're confident in using our computer to move our money in our banks, or to do whatever we can today with a cell phone or with a computer, it's become normal. It's not a technology problem. Technology has already solved many of the problems that we can bring forward, and it has also surpassed also many of the problems that are in actual technologies. Because, for example, in Italy, we have a big problem in voting from abroad, because we have many problems in getting the people to be able to vote, and then we're not sure that those votes that come back are actually being given by the people that send them by post, because they don't send them directly; they send them in with intermediaries. So that is obviously one place where a direct vote online would be much better. Would have many less risks than the actual system. So when we start comparing systems on the voting side, that is the most delicate thing. We already find a lot of spaces where the online voting is much better than the actual systems, even on a risk perspective. On the participation perspective, we have many spaces today that are possible to be taken on directly online with no risk in respect to what we have today, and with just new ways of getting people involved. And the only thing I see is that the actual organizations want to preserve power. So I guess that's normal. If you have a person that can choose 100, why should he be able to choose 50 tomorrow? He'll want to choose 100 even tomorrow. And this is a normal thing that happens also in big organizations. If we think of Kodak, many of us know what Kodak was in last century. it was employing 50,000 employees, and everything that went around taking a photo passed by Kodak. Why didn't Kodak do Instagram? It had all the knowledge, it had all the digital photography. It simply didn't want to cannibalize its actual power, and then it's vanished. And the same thing we see in many other companies like Blockbuster. We saw it all over the world. And why wasn't Blockbuster able to invest or maybe buy directly Netflix? It had the money, it had everything, but it just decided not to. It saw it as a risk to go in that direction. And I think that is the reason for which new platforms, very solid platforms like Rousseau, were able to be born with new organizations in the political arena. It's very difficult for old organizations to decide to change. It must come from above, the decision to change. So if you don't have a big decision from that level, you will never be able to change all the organization. You have to have, and it's very difficult for that level to decide for this type of evolution of the organization. And that is the reason for which in many cases, the adoption of participation platforms finishes up in marketing. And that is the reason for which I'm saying that the division that you can see from marketing activities and from real participation activities is in the binding stuff. And so if there is a binding decision, it's a revolution. If it's not binding, it's marketing.
Right. Yeah. We kind of then are stuck with because, well, at least here, as we see it, the ones that make the decision of letting, the ones in power are the ones that need to decide to let go of power, and it's difficult to see a moment in which people with power will decide to have less power. So,
for example, it happened in Italy, and the moment it happened was the moment in which the Five Star Movement went into Parliament, at least the first time, and it obtained 25% of the shares, the second of the votes. The second time, 32% of the vote, national vote, from something that didn't exist 12 years ago, 15 years ago, did not exist. So it started with a blog talking about social and economic issues in Italy.
There was like a timing also. The moment was there for it to happen, right?
Yeah, of course. I've been studying a lot the story of movements in history, and movements, obviously, popular movements come up when there's a big crisis. That is the normal moment where they come up. So 2007, 2008 was was one of the moments where a lot of movements around the world just came up from nothing, because there was a lot of unrest that had to go in represented in new movements, and this happened with Arab Spring, or with 99% in New York, or in Spain with various movements there, and or Mudamos in Brazil. And so there were a lot of new movements that came along with the crisis, and I think we are coming into a new type of crisis in the next few months. So maybe there will be a new opportunity for these new movements to come up with new technology, with new platforms, and new ways of getting people involved.
Yeah, and because one thing that I keep asking myself is, when I did a research recently, a mapping of digital platforms for political participation, and one thing that I've seen in this research is, like, with the exception of Rousseau, most of the experiences that used digital platforms for political participation remain restricted to a local level, regional at max. And I keep asking me, like, why is that? Like, the benefits seem so obvious, if there's such an optimistic perspective towards direct and participatory democracy, why is it so difficult to scale these benefits of these platforms? It is solely a political problem, or maybe is that it is this symptom of a more deep problem, like the very architecture of our politics is outdated. So these digital platforms, these forms of participation, demands a new way of thinking politics. How do you perceive this? It makes sense?
Yeah, it's well, I think it's something that always happened in history. From Plato, that was saying that people should not be applauding in Syracuse theater in 400 before Christ, I think, something around there. And he was saying, "Oh, this can't be. This is a new form of theatrocracy. People just applauding to say if they like it or not. So we have to. We are the people who studied and know if that is a good piece or not in a theatrical piece." So I think this has always happened in history. People in power want to be able to administer the power, and it's difficult to let go that piece of power that you managed to obtain. So I think that is the main reason for which we have this problem, not with the digital world, in general with the participation system, because even with referenda in Italy, at least, we have a big problem, because we do a referendum, people decide in one direction, and just a couple of years later, politicians decide elsewhere. So I think it's just a system that needs to be evolved. And I think it will just take time. Today we have electric cars in a period where we have carriages with horses in politics. So that is the rate of evolution of politics, because we still use paper, we still use the parliaments that are with the idea of 100 years ago, maybe 150 years ago. So this evolution will come. It's just a question of time. Today we have the technology, we have the ways of involving people. So if parliaments will not do it, if existing parties will not adopt these new ways of participation, simply new things will appear. So it will be a new Instagram going against the Blockbuster, or it will be against the Kodak, new Netflix going against the Blockbuster, and we'll have a new type of organization, new platform society that will decide in spite of the parliament, or in spite of the representative democracy that we have. So I think it will simply be something necessary that we will have there, because if people are used to be able to do something, it's going to be difficult to say, to tell them they are not allowed to do that. Today, one of the things that we're taking forward is the digital citizenship that today we are experiencing in many ways, with these new rights that are appearing thanks to technology, not only within organizations, but as a community as a whole. So we need to understand what this digital citizenship is, because otherwise we'll just leave these new rights that are appearing that we have to deal with, and we just leave them to big organizations or big multinationals that will deal with them directly. And I think this is the main objective that we should have in these next months. Understand how this technology needs to be used and what are our digital rights that we should claim for the community.
And do you think that we are able nowadays to have a glimpse on this evolution, or to predict this future architecture of politics, or it would be something completely, it will necessarily be something completely unpredictable, the sorts of, I don't know, like when Apple launched the iPhone and changed completely how we deal with communication. Like, how do you perceive this evolution of participation, the way we do politics nowadays?
Well, I think it's pretty easy to see what's going to happen, because for every big evolution that we have had, even the example that you were saying with the iPhone, Apple, in reality, there was already a new type of phone before the iPhone that was very similar to that. And also in politics, we can see the way that people can participate directly. It is already possible today. We've done it in Italy, and it's been done in other ways, in different ways in other parts of the world. For example, Taiwan, or I've seen nice examples in Chile and in the States, in various levels of cities that, or in Paris that has, or in Rome that have involved people, citizens, in the decisions of towns. So it is already possible to see today what the technology is allowing us to do in the era of politics. And for every big evolution, there is somewhere where we've already started to do it. So it's just necessary to go and see where we've already started doing that type of participation, and where it's worked best. That will be probably the place or the way that we will see expanding in the next few years in other contexts.
You mentioned other countries, and I reminded one thing that I was very curious is many of the experiences that I found of digital platforms, they were very restricted to Europe and North America, United States specifically. Do you have any knowledge of, well, of course you have like Mudamos here in Brazil and Democracia OS in Argentina that are, but even those experiences, they are not like as as far as others in Europe and North America. How do you see this? How do you perceive this concentration? Like, do you have any knowledge of other experiences in maybe Africa or Asia that are interesting, that are towards this more participatory democracy?
Well, I've seen examples at various levels of participation. We can have a basic participation level, and that can also be a Facebook group or whatever. For example, there's I think in Nigeria there's a good example where women have got together in this group to defend. That was after the after an event, a nasty event on women, and this group came up. That is just to have a group on the same level that can discuss on a topic or on more topics. Then you have people getting involved in the state at various levels. So you can have towns that have the participatory budgeting, and there's many examples. There's thousands of examples of towns around the world where you have people getting involved in deciding how to allocate the money of the town. Then you have people getting involved at the state level, so to design the constitution. And there was a good example in Iceland, for example, a few years ago. Unfortunately, as I was describing before, it wasn't binding. So you had a splendid example of participation of citizens that wrote out the constitution and got comments from other citizens and wrote the best constitutions they would like. And then they had the new parliament that was elected, and they said, okay, we don't want that stuff. We'll take care of the real problems because we know how to. Then you have governments that say, okay, let's open up to citizens and let's get people at least giving us binding questions for the government or for the parliament. And you have that in Finland, you have that in UK, you have that in Taiwan, you have that in many places that decide, okay, let's get citizens at least to be able to ask the government or the parliament for an answer, for a binding question. Then you have organizations that get organized online, and you have various levels of this organization. You have people that get together and protest for something that they don't like or they would like to be changed. And you have, so for example, the 99% in New York for the financial problems. You have the Me Too movements around for violence on women. You have the Fridays for Future and on the environmental. And there you have just the organization of the event. So let's go in the square and let's protest for this every Friday or whatever. And let's say we don't like it. And many of the movements stop at this level. For example, also the Arab Spring stopped at this level. They weren't able to go the next step. And the next step is very difficult because you need people to decide who will be representing this movement, who will be deciding for issues if we want to go here or there, or who will be, if we want to negotiate our issues with someone, who will be deciding for that negotiation, and who will be deciding if that is okay or not. Because at that level, you need to have people that are members or not members. So you have to define a circle around this movement and say, you in or you're out. If you're in, you can decide. If you're out, you cannot. You can participate at our events, but you cannot decide. That is the difficult part, and not many have done that second level. We've done it with Rousseau, and so that level needs to get people members. So you need to have the onboarding part, and then you have to allow members to decide. So you have to have rules to understand how those decisions will be taken, how the representatives will be chosen, how we will be writing out the questions, how we will be deciding on what things we should be deciding. And that is a very more complex dimension of a movement, especially if you want to keep it as a movement and not as a party, because the difference is, okay, let's delegate, and then the top guy will decide on everything we need to decide. And that's the party structure. If you want to keep a holographic organization, holocratic organization, sorry, I don't get the English words correct every time, holocratic organization with a distributed power, you need to have a distributed organization that obviously is on a platform society model. So that is the most difficult thing you can have, because you have obviously the tendency of derailing and saying, okay, we've protested and that's it. Okay, now let's give the keys of this protest to the people who know how to do it, and to traditional parties. Or the next level is, okay, now we've done what we need to do. Let's give the thing to the people who are elected in our organization, and let's let them to do all the good stuff that we can do. And you transform the movement in a party. The most difficult thing is to maintain the movement structure and let the people from bottom up decide. That is the most difficult thing to do, because obviously you have a lot of interests in the people who go into power and go into the power within the movement or within the state, that want to obviously change that, or want not to give out too much of their power to the distributed organization. So that is the most difficult thing to do.
And you also need to keep everyone engaged. One of the things that I've observed in these platforms, one of the challenges is to keep people engaged in the platform, to keep people participating. And
people will participate if their decision is binding, if their decision is important, if their participation and their decision is worth nothing. They obviously will go and go and do something else, and they'll be more happy. So that is it's not a problem of people not wanting to participate. It's an issue of, okay, once I do participate, what do I get in exchange? Do I at least get? I can participate for free, okay, but do I at least get in exchange the fact that my voice will be fundamental?
Mm-hmm.
If I do get that in exchange, you will get participation in the platforms. And that is the reason for which we did the world record of participation in a single day vote in Italy, because that was a binding decision.
Yes, Perfect. Well, we are arriving to the end of the interview, and I would like to do a question because, if I'm not mistaken, 2021, we are completing a mark of 10 years of the history of movements like the Indignados in Spain, the Arab Spring in the Middle East, and some other cases. What is your evaluation in the last decade of digital activism? What did remain and what was lost from these experiences? And what do you see as the future of movements?
Well, I think these 10 years have allowed people to see that it is possible to participate digitally. It is possible to have an organization that is organized online. It is possible to have a new way of thinking in politics. So I think this is the main result that we've had in these years, in many ways. Who has had more success, who has less, but the main result is today that no one can say, no, that's not possible to do. That's not technically possible to do. It's too costly. People cannot say that anymore. So this is, I think, the condition in which a new way of politics today is possible. People know it is possible. You don't have to demonstrate anything to anyone anymore. So if people will bring forward ideas, allowing broad participation, people will want to participate because they know that that is effective, that is something that will bring forward their ideas and will create value. Because that is the main thing. If you have a lot of people participating in a decision, it will be a bit more long, that decision, but you will have much more value. And it's not just the value of many more brains that have been put in that decision. It's also the value of the fact that that decision will be fought for by all the people that have participated in that decision, that will manage to fight for that decision, fight for that idea, because they are part of that idea. That, I think, is the main value that you can have in a broad participation.
Excellent, for sure. I told that was the last question, but I actually have one more that I just came now. It's like specifically talking about Brazil, it seems that the right and the far right parties and movements are more, at least for the moment, more familiarized with the languages and the discourses of the internet and the use of digital technologies, while left parties and movements that are more identified as leftists are still trying to grasp their potential, the potential of these technologies. Do you think it's possible that the use of technologies for democratic purpose could in some way backfire and legitimize authoritarian figures?
Well, I actually don't think that is necessarily true. I've seen the parties and the people that you were mentioning using online tools to especially do all the political campaigning before elections. I haven't seen them do as much as getting people involved directly in a participation platform, in deciding, in a distributing decision-making system. So, yes, possibly they've these that you've mentioned have understood how to use the net to do campaigning, political online campaigning. But that's just one minor part of how we can naturally use the online participation platforms. And it's actually not the most important. It's probably the most important a couple of months before elections, but all the other 5 years round, if you don't get people involved directly, they'll just go away and don't participate.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's no reason for which they should.
So maybe one way of turning around this situation would be for left parties and leftist movements to give away because in these movements you have some sort of leaders that conduct these movements. So one way would be for these leaders to give up a little bit of their power and crowdsource the movement, and make the movement more collaborative.
I don't actually see much difference between right and left in the use of these platforms, because the main issue is always the same. It's the fact that traditional parties tend to not want to give away structural power of the party to members of the party. So this is true with the left, true with the right, and that's it. You normally see new activities, new ways of using the online with new movements, not with traditional ones. But that's probably normal, and that's will be the end of some parties that, like Blockbuster, didn't want to see the future. And on the other side, maybe we'll see new movements like Instagram and Netflix came up from just using the net in a different way.
Perfect. Well, Davide, I would like to thank you for your time and having this conversation with us. Would you like to say anything more? Like, if people want to, can people contact you or the movement? How can people get in touch to know more about Rousseau or the Camelot project?
Yeah, sure. You can contact me. The best way is my email. That's David with an E on the end, Davide at casaleggio.it. So name and surname.it.
I'll put all the you give me authorization to put all the information in the end of the video. So then we have an interview. Thank you a lot. Thank you for your time. Congratulations one more time on the twins. And
thank you.
We'll see you in a next opportunity.
Okay. It was great to talk to you. Bye-bye, Bruno.